First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a really great pleasure to be at this event. I'm especially happy that this is an ELF event, the European Liberal Forum, that I have an honor to represent here. And thank you so much for organizing it. I'll be very brief. I'll try to. When I was invited, I was told that this last panel is supposed to be optimistic, more positive. and this is how I tried to prepare the presentation. And I was thinking, what can I say from Polish perspective to be very optimistic, especially that this is a Polish perspective. And if we're talking about, if we're going to talk about the democracy, about e-democracy, about participation and Poland, it's really hard to be optimistic. So I will be. I found one example that I would like to share with you. But talking about these issues and Poland, you cannot start without being really pessimistic. And just let me stress it very briefly. So probably most of you know that since 2015, Poland is governed by the Law and Justice Party. So it's clearly a illiberal regime, illiberal government. It's for the first time in Poland's history after 1989, so after the democratic transition, that one party has a full majority in both chambers of the parliament, has its president, has a full control over state media, and of course did all the changes that are everything but democratic. So the changes in the judiciary system, in the media, if it comes to many of the human rights, including women's rights. So this is really everything but democracy. So if we're talking about e-democracy or new forms of democracy, participative democracy, and this government, the first impression would be that such government would not be really interested in doing anything in the direction of forwarding these types of democracy. And this impression is good. This impression as well is correct. So since the 90s till 2015, so when this government came into power, we had like slowly but steadily we were advancing our forms of democracy online using the new forms. It was done by many actors, not only the state. But after the 2015, these changes are definitely not given the priority to this government. It was before. It was definitely the previous government gave a green light to advance these forms of democracy, but now it's not a priority, mostly because this government is simply not interested in any of the systematic changes. They are interested in an ideology. They are interested in huge infrastructure projects to show to the people that we are doing great, just like it was in the communist times, but they are not interested in democracy and these changes. I'll skip that, I guess. And I'll go straight to the point, to the positive aspects. So it's not all that bad. Definitely, I could say that there is development in the new forms of democracy and activism and participation, but it's not done mostly by the government. It's done somewhere else. So it's done by the civil society and by the local authorities. So first of all, civil society plays a huge role. And I would say now, with this government, the role is even bigger and it's more important than it was before. Why is that? Simply because people who are activists, who are members of NGOs, they feel that the democracy not only to be protected from this government, but also must be advanced. So they are using tools, producing tools. There is new organizations appearing on the NGO market who are actually doing that, who are convincing people to use new forms of democracy just to have a way of fighting back what's happening on the central level. I just wanted to show you two tools that I find practical, and I think most people find it practical. So there are tools like Mam prawo wiedzieć, which stands for I have a right to know, where NGOs and experts compare the declaration of politicians with how they really vote and what they really do. It's a popular tool. And the other one, demagog.pl, which checks, with fact checks what politicians say and say if it's true or if it's false. Here's an example of a false statement. So these tools are developing, and I think this is a very important tool because, as you mentioned in your presentation about the fake news, in my country, the biggest factory of the fake news is the government, is the public media. So we need tools, we need organizations who would check if the politicians both...
Is this by media or an NGO?
This is by an NGO.
An NGO.
This is by an NGO. Like in Poland, recently I was listening to an interview with Deputy Minister of Digital Affairs. Maybe she is an independent clerk, I don't know, but she was saying we need to combat with the fake news. We need to have a governmental tool to combat the fake news. And my heartbeat stops for a moment, because if we in Poland have a governmental organization to prove, to check the fake news, this is just gonna repeat and escalate. There's gonna be people who are creating the fake news are gonna probably say that something that is very true is not true anymore. So this is really dangerous. So NGO is one thing, but the other thing I would like to share with you, which is my the best positive example I could find in Poland of participation, of using new forms of communication in progressing the democracy, is the participatory budget, or also how we call it in Poland, the civic budget. I'm not sure if it's something so common also in the countries that you're coming from, but in Poland we've seen a huge development. It all started in 2011, so not so long time ago, and right now it's last year 80 cities and counties participated. For those who don't know what's about, it's a city, a town or a county that assigns a part of its budget, mostly it's between 1% and 2%, and opens a call for everybody, for all the citizens to apply for projects to be developed in their closest neighborhoods, in their districts, in their cities. And people do it massively, and then people vote online about which project is going to win, and then these projects are implemented. So this was something new a few years ago, but right now it's a really popular thing, and it's a way that cities can really approach their citizens and discuss with them in a way the needs of the neighborhoods and of the cities, and it's something that we all find important and fruitful. So since this tool is so popular, and it's well estimated by the citizens, by the administration, but also by the NGOs and experts. Last year, the parliament passed the law, and participatory budget is going to be obligatory in all bigger cities. So around 100 Polish cities will be obliged to put 0.5% of their budget to participatory budget. We could open a discussion if it's really good that they did it on the national level, and if I believe it's over-regulated on the national level, it would be better if the cities could do it themselves. But just I would like to point you at the direction we are going. And just to give you also an example, so in Warsaw last year, we spent around 80 million euros in participatory budget. The projects cannot be bigger than 1 million euro, 100,000 euros. You cannot apply for bigger projects. And what's very important, we vote and apply for project on 3 different levels, so the neighborhood, district, and the city. This is also important, not to create only huge projects. The closer they are to the people, the important it is. This is what we believe. This year we have a discussion about the negative votes, because some of the projects that are elected, that are voted in and implemented, are I would say controversial. So even though they win in the elections because they get, let's say, 25% of votes, there is a big part of the population who believe that we should do something totally contrary. I could give you some examples, but maybe then in private talks after this presentation. So in Warsaw, the budget of the participatory budget is growing every year, and reached last year over 60 million Polish zlotys, so it's about 15 million euros. Also, the number of projects is growing. 2017 was exceptionally high. Last year was less, but I think it's actually a good tendency, because it means that people actually do their pre-selection before they apply. They discuss more the projects before they apply. What's worrisome in Warsaw is the turnout. It's actually getting lower and lower, and we have to think what to do about that, and some criticism. So the low turnout would be my first criticism. We should think about how to make this turnout higher. In big cities like Warsaw, the turnout is between 10 and 20%. In Wrocław, which is 5th biggest Polish city, the turnout is over 30%, which is the most successful story here. But in smaller locations, smaller towns, the turnout can be even 50%. So every other citizen goes and votes, which is basically the level of turnout we have in general elections. Or local elections, so it's a really good, which is a really good number. The other criticism is clientelism, so the fact that often the budget is used to satisfy some groups of people connected to politicians or connected to some organizations. So for example, just some examples of how you can misuse these funds is you can be a school and you can decide as a school that you need a new sport field or something. And being a school principal who has connections to so many students, pupils, and their parents, they can actually get enough votes to get their project elected. And the last criticism from my side and from I would say the liberal side of the Polish political spectrum is that very often municipalities use this participatory budget as an excuse not to do anything else in this field. So they feel that participatory budget is enough and they don't have to do any more consultations. They don't have to reach to any new forms of e-democracy, of active participation and contact with citizens because they do this civic budget projects, and this is just fine. This is something that they are very proud of. The way forward. So just a short summing up why I even talked about it, why I choose these topics, because as I told you, I think this is a positive example in a negative environment we are having in Poland. And I think it's crucial that local authorities, regional authorities, because right now we have one region, entire big region in Poland that's also doing it on a bigger level, are using the modern tools to involve people in democratic actions. So in times when the government is doing much against the democracy as such, we have some activities that actually are involving and welcoming. And what I find especially important is that it's a great lesson of democracy, that people on the local level, they can see that their change, that their activism, that their initiatives can change their closest environment. And I think it's especially crucial in the times when we observe lack of interest in political parties, lack of interest in ideologies. But we don't observe lack of interest in activism. So people want to change their cities, people want to change some causes they fight for, but not in political parties. So tools like that connected with the internet that we all have in our pockets right now can really be a new form of engaging citizens in political life. Thank you.